Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 21 of Season 2 of Gunners and Blues. My name is Sean Morgan. I am joined by Andrew Gump, and if you are watching this on YouTube, then you are seeing us for the very first time. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. Hello.
And if you're not watching it on YouTube and you're just listening to us as normal, well, then, we gave you
also hello.
Yeah, I guess that's technically true.
Also hello.
We gave you this fine opportunity to see our wonderful mugs, and you chose to instead continue to listen to us on your preferred podcast platform that hopefully allows you, the ability to subscribe and rate. But that's a talk for 20 to 25 minutes later. I'm in a good mood. I am in a good mood. It is despite having worked by about 13 and a half hours today. Surprisingly enough, because by golly, 3 points feels weird to to look at the table this season, not see us at the very fucking bottom. Oh man.
Man, the loft that you guys are getting nosebleeds up at 15th or is it 16th?
Actually, to be quite honest, I think it's 15th now. But I'm going to take a look really quick just to double check. Yeah, because I think Burnley got slapped really hard. Yeah, 16th. Sorry, 16th. Unfortunately, Watford's got us beat on that goal differential.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Perfect.
It's a shame. Well, this is the Arsenal-centric episode of the beginning of the week. So I will be leading the show, and we will talk about a couple of different things. I mostly want to talk about the Norwich match, less about the result and more about kind of what we saw on the pitch and the, I would say, some unusual but very positive personnel choices that I think led to the victory and kind of give us a glimpse as to what the next couple of weeks and months, for that matter, just might look like. So 1-0. Like I said, without kind of diving into the result too much, I didn't watch the match live, and ended up watching a replay, so I knew the result and kind of when the goal was scored. So I was able to look at a few things more objectively without that panic. It's one of those weird things. Like you kind of get it, where the result, you watch the match, you're able to not be just like fearful and like fretting the entire time of what's going to happen. So we kind of did the same thing, and I've highlighted this on the podcast before. One of the most frustrating things about Arsenal under Arteta is that we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes of really of a positive start. If things don't go disastrous in the first 5, right? And we've seen that happen, usually against Man City, where they bag a goal in the first, few seconds. But we'll have a lot of very positive play in the first 10 to 15 minutes, and then we kind of hit this lull where things don't really manifest the way that they need to. Either it's a few defensive mistakes, maybe some, I don't say uncharacteristic, but maybe some unfortunate turnovers, and then this basically just stagnant play. Thankfully, even though that happened to a certain extent, it didn't seem to impact us too much. And a lot of that I attribute, and I pretty much called that heading into the when we did the preview last week, that if that happened, I didn't think that Norwich had the quality to really capitalize on it, and that ended up being the case. The keeper play was great. Kroll had as good of a game, and this always seems to happen whenever we play teams that are on the bottom half of the table. Suddenly, their keepers turn into just worldies after worldies, like save. It's like, okay, that's fine. I didn't want to win anyway. That's cool.
Yeah. It was so. Norwich were the worst team in the league. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I don't want to rain on your parade too much, but God, Pookie looks lost out there. Oh man, like I said, I don't want to go to it, but just every chance that they did have, Pookie was like, "Well, I'm going to take about 4 touches and then just flap my foot at it, see what happens."
And it didn't work.
It did not work.
This really does just, on a quick side note, a lot of this really does feel like the last time Norwich was in the league, where they just simply don't have the personnel to compete in the style that they want to play. And you'd think that this time they had kind of equipped themselves a little bit better to potentially like make that challenge to stay in the league. But they're just, it doesn't seem like it's happening the way that maybe, Norwich fans would like. And it's
You lose Buendia. I mean, he was easily their most creative, their best player.
He was the
Not much
catalyst.
going for them.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was the
he
catalyst
was.
to
He
make things
was.
happen. And nobody's really stepped up. And they didn't really spend that money, in getting a player that could. But it's kind of tough when you're in a situation like Norwich to really do that effectively, especially with how expensive players are now that are difference makers. You have to hope that you're finding not really a diamond in the rough, but more of like that C plus tier guy that you think can turn into maybe a high B. And then you can turn around. Like, I feel like Wendy is as a high like B player. Like, he has moments where he is in the A category, but consistently he was their best player in a team that was full of D and C players. So, it is a rough go for him. I mean, thankfully we couldn't have played them at a better time. So, ultimately, it's that hopefully not a relegation 6-pointer, but for now it was.
You did. If it is, hey, that's one positive for the Arsenal.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk mostly about the some of the unexpected, changes in the lineup, because looking at my prediction from last week. So I had Leno, obviously, at keeper. I did have Callum Chambers at right back because I did not think Tomiyasu would be ready. I did think Partey would get the start, but I did have some, hesitancies on how early would he be subbed out. It ended up being kind of like the flip-flop of that. And this is a so these three moves I want to talk about. So Ainsley Maitland-Niles first. We'll kind of go in reverse order because I feel like it's the most impactful to talk about. So Ainsley Maitland-Niles coming in, playing in a defensive, like, midfielding role, felt strange. So there are things that he did, and I know you watched the match too, so you can kind of tell me how you feel about this. There are things that he did that I thought were decently positive. He looked nervous. He looked a little bit shaky. There were a few poor passes. There just seemed to be a slight confidence issue, and maybe it's a little bit of rust, right? Maybe it's a little bit of, in order to really feel comfortable on the ball, I think in situations like this in the Premier League, even if you're going against, a team like Norwich, there's still a certain level of, play that's expected at this level. And so him not getting a decent run of games, and I would say a meaningful substitution or getting meaningful minutes, meant that he looked a little shaky on the ball. But otherwise, I was, I don't say impressed. I was satisfied.
Yeah. It's weird, though. He strikes you when you're watching him as a player that doesn't actually know what position he plays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually he shifted back into right back. I didn't expect Tomiyasu, like, once he was on the pitch to, play a play. The fitness just simply wasn't there. But for me, I was able to see enough, I think, of Ainsley Maitland-Niles to feel comfortable with him as a depth player, both at the midfield role and at the right back role. And again, if we have a need to shift to a back three at any point, depending on the matchup, I do feel comfortable with him at right wing back. I mean, we saw it, in 2019 quite extensively at the beginning of 2020, where he filled in admirably at that role, if not above average. So that positional versatility and that flexibility, getting him some meaningful minutes, I think this was the perfect situation. Partey is obviously crucial to the way that we function, and we could see the huge difference, like statistically, that it made when he came on, and when Emile Smith-Rowe came on, for that matter as well.
So good, so good. Watch it. He made it. The team just looks so much different. Those two substitutions. It's so hard, right? Watching that game, Arsenal were obviously the superior team, but up until those substitutions were made, it wouldn't have surprised anyone if Norwich nicked the goal, in my opinion. Up until those two substitutions. And you wonder how you're going to keep all of those 11 players fit, as it's not worked out particularly well for you.
I mean, I've got a pretty good reason, or a pretty good way. It's called
Okay.
not being in Europe. I mean, realistically, that actually
Oh man.
does benefit us.
Hey, Arteta really is playing 4D chess.
Like big brain, man.
He's like,
big brain.
And now I'll show them.
No, I mean, it really does help, and I think that we have and the crazy thing here, right? And I know a lot of people have talked about like our average age of this starting 11 is like 24. Like it's something crazy low. And for us, it's going to be a matter of we have enough youth depth. There we go. Words are hard. To rotate out for some of these cup games that I think we're going to be able to keep this starting 11 or keep a similar starting 11, intact for meaningful games. Really, the big crucial components, in my opinion, are going to be Emile Smith-Rowe, are going to be Partey, and I feel like it's that center back pairing of White and Gabriel because I really don't trust any of our other center backs aerially. Tomiyasu is everything that we needed at right back because we needed somebody who was going to be able to play essentially in that defensive role. We don't need somebody like Hector Bellerin who is always looking to bomb forward. That's what we do on the left side. So we needed somebody who was going to essentially fill in and play in a predominantly defensive role with a predominantly defensive mindset and be able to have decisive passing because we want to be able to move the ball down that side as it's necessary, but our attacking focus is usually going to be on the left. Tomiyasu really, I think, fills that role excellently. I mean, again, it's just one game. But the fact that it was on such short notice meant that whatever it is that Tomiyasu showed in the limited amount of training up into this match meant that Arteta had the full buy-in. Let's do it. Let's put you in. There's no better match to integrate you than one that's against, a bottom of the table side. And it worked out perfectly. I'm very excited to see him, week in and week out. He very much reminds me of the way that Nacho Monreal played, where it's that, collected kind of confidence where you don't really feel like, I don't know. I don't get nervous whenever I see, an attack down that side. Whenever, another team is attacking down that side and it's like Cedric Suarez or it's Callum Chambers, I'm just like, oh God, what's going to happen? Right? Where's the mistake going to come from? Yeah. Is he just going to get straight up beat? Is it going to be a bad foul? Like, what's going to happen? I did not get that feeling with Tomiyasu.
I mean, it's also because they had no attacking prowess. But yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. All Arsenal fans have to grasp on these things, right? It's a positive. Let's be perfectly honest. It's a positive result. You're playing high flyers Burnley next, so. Woo.
I know, right? It's, I mean, as I hit it a couple of weeks ago, this is, if there's a time for us to go through and, try and salvage something, it's here. And in reality, I think if the Brentford match had gone differently, that had we gotten beat by Chelsea and Man City, nobody would have been really that shocked. Because we literally went back to back against the two teams that played in the Champions League final. So I mean, like, give it, and then we didn't make Europe. So, not even just trying to sound like trying to homer it up, like being realistic. Those are two matches where we would not be favored, and losing them wouldn't be a big stretch. But because of how flat we came out against Brentford, that really amplified everything. So having a match like this helps take a little bit of the pressure off and gives us a little momentum. But I really want to talk about the Aaron Ramsdale situation. Before we do that, did you have something you wanted to talk about?
I did have one thing. Okay. I'm kind of interested, and I haven't really had a chance to talk to many Arsenal fans about this. What's your take on Saka at the moment? And I don't mean like, is he good or bad? We know he has bags of potential, but he does seem to be missing something this season. I know it's quite early into the season. He just doesn't look as comfortable, doesn't look as effective when we've seen him on the pitch. I wonder if you had any take on that.
So I think it's a combination of a couple of different things. One, I think Pepe has had an increased role attacking wise. And so sometimes, especially considering that with, I think how obvious we've been on the left-hand side and how Pepe has looked very poor on the left. Having him on the right and being able to integrate him more into the attack has drawn some of the attention away from Saka and given him fewer opportunities. So that way, when something goes a little rough on a possession, you know, where Saka is either dispossessed or maybe the shot's kind of poor or he has to, you know, he has it for a few seconds and has to find a back pass, something where it's a little rough. Those instances, because his opportunities are fewer and farther between, they're easier to see. I do wonder if there is a confidence issue right now, especially from the Euros. I know that's kind of the big thing, is how much of that has carried over. And it's really hard for me to say. Players can go through rough patches. And sometimes there's a mental reason. Sometimes there's a physical reason. You know, sometimes there's just, it's just a simple luck, right? You go through these patches where every shot that you make seems to land. I mean, Aubameyang had that purple patch, season and a half ago, where everything that he wanted to shoot found the back of the net. And then he went through and had a very poor next season for multiple reasons, physical health, mental health, there's just a bunch of stuff. So I do think that a lot of this is probably confidence based. I don't think it's too much to do with the Euros. I think it's adding to it maybe a little bit, especially in fans' minds, which if you hear that as a player, I think that you internally digest it a bit more, and then it becomes a problem. Whereas it wasn't really before. It was just simply, a run of bad form. I don't know what the right solution is. I'm not the manager, so I can't say, you know what, let's just keep playing him. Eventually he'll work through it. I think that the fact that we do lack Europe means that there were fewer opportunities for him to get out of the funk. And, it's going to be a matter of how much can he see, in cup time versus league time. And then from there, how do you evaluate who then to slot in on the left? Do you move Aubameyang back? Do you have a couple of games where you put Aubameyang there and Lacazette up front? That's, that Lacazette, Aubameyang, Pepe attack did not really do the greatest, but we now have a much more, I think, decisive way of playing with Partey healthy and without having a liability at right back. The one last part that I think is impacting Saka is I think Tierney hasn't had the best start to the season. And that link-up play, I think, is huge in giving Saka just enough time to make a decisive move either on the ball or off the ball. And if Tierney is underperforming, then because our attack mostly goes down the left-hand side, that's going to impact anybody that's playing on the wing on the left. So I think it's a combination of things. Do you have anything that you think is impacting it, or did I cross all of the bridges?
You basically covered it up. I'm just really interested because he was so important. And he really is on the periphery of most of the games that I've watched this season with Arsenal. And you start to worry, right? Because at a certain point in time, you look at how urgent results are going to be for Arsenal at this point in time, and how many more games does he get to work himself out of that funk? This is what you were alluding to. How many more games before you have to make a change?
Yeah.
Before you have to and then without, then are you playing him in the Carabao Cup? No one wants to play in the Carabao Cup.
No, he's outgrown that, right? I mean, he's done the youth thing. So I do wonder, and I think that we're in a good spell of games where he's going to have opportunities against competition that won't be as tough for him to build up some confidence. It's also a matter of, from a fitness standpoint, there was also a bit of a ramp-up time coming back from the Euros. And there's always that lull where players, take some time off, whether it be, suddenly they're not as physically fit as they needed to be. They're not really in the training mindset. They're not really in that mental space that they need to be. So that could also factor in a little bit as well. Again, I do think it's multiple factors, but I am on the same page as you. It does have me a little bit nervous, but we've seen Saka come out of these things before where he's had some rough patches of form. Nothing quite like having to recover from the Euros, though. So, eyes are going to be peeled, definitely. Well, let's take a quick break. Unless you're on YouTube, in which case it's going to look seamless. But if you're listening to us on your normal podcasting platform, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will be right back with a little bit of talk about one Aaron Ramsdale. All right, everybody, welcome back. So before we went to break, we were going to talk about Aaron Ramsdale and the surprise inclusion with Bernd Leno being dropped. Now, if you listen to the Arsenal-Norwich preview episode, I actually talked about this, and I went the other direction. I had heard the rumors. I had heard the noise that maybe this was a match for, Arteta to try Ramsdale out in league, and it was in some ways a safe match for him to do it, but in a lot of other ways, this is a match that really needed to go the right way. So the fact that Arteta had the confidence in him to go through, and even though, again, this is an easier match on paper, but situationally speaking, was a must-win, I was very surprised, both before the match and then after having watched it. So I do wonder how much of this really has hinged on the fact that Bernd Leno has dipped in so many different areas over the last maybe 6 or 7 months where teams know how to exploit him. And that this is a way for us to potentially mix things up a bit. Bernd Leno is very easy to press. Bernd Leno has a tendency to get beat at, and this wasn't an issue before. He's been beaten at the near post so many times. It's this, like, he doesn't have nearly the command that he used to.
Yeah.
And if you watch Ramsdale play, he's very vocal. He's very in tune, I think, with it, and he's enthusiastically thanking his defenders for different things.
It's infectious, right? You appreciate that and in any sport, you appreciate a player like that.
And Bernd Leno was never really like that.
No.
So
the German efficiency,
Yeah, I know it. Really, it is. And
I've made the save.
Yeah, I've done what I've needed to do. That is all. I think Ramsdale's distribution is a bit better. I think that, and this is huge, right? This is huge, and you, I think, as a Chelsea fan, can appreciate this angle. The difference in the way that your defense plays, at least before Kepa's redemption, or at least string of decent performances. The way that they play with Mendy versus Kepa, it was almost night and day. There was just much more, the communication was better, the enthusiasm and the engagement defensively were better, and that sense of, reliance that has to be instinctual as a defender at this level suddenly was there. And to me, when you talk about defensive mistakes, I feel like defensive mistakes, especially at the highest level of the sport, are about 95% mental and 5% physical. It's a matter of, and there are players who understand and know their limitations and can account for them. One of the best examples I can give you in that regard is Mertesacker. Mertesacker was fantastic in knowing, he is not the fastest guy on the pitch by any stretch. So he had to play intelligently defensively and know that he can rely on players like Koscielny, players like, Monreal, players that, like the way Hector Bellerin was before, to account for what it is that he wouldn't be able to do. And at the time, we had midfielders, like Arteta. We had midfielders like good old Flim Flam, who knew what their role was. And for the longest time now, we've had players who simply lack confidence sometimes in their physicality, and they don't make up for it in their mental fortitude. There's a certain German player that I think was always, keen for a mistake. Mustafi is now well gone, but I think that's the prime example where you watched him physically know what he was capable of, but he would mentally disengage with the game. Having a keeper that you can have confidence in, that is going to actively engage with you vocally and physically, makes such a huge difference in giving you that extra mental fortitude. To me, this is the biggest difference that I saw in this match versus games with Leno. Now, what I want to get your opinion on this. What do you think Arteta should do after this performance? Do you go...
You stick with him.
You stick with Ramsdale?
I think you stick with Ramsdale. This is a point, for me, something I wanted to bring up, but we were kind of going over in time in the last... That was a very good time to bring him in, right? I think anyone that's watched Norwich play, they don't offer a whole lot. At this point in time, you get him in there. He has an instant impact, like you said, on the mentality of the players. He gets a boost in confidence. Right now, he knows he belongs, or at least he feels like he belongs. You keep him in there. You have to show. It's very similar to the Marcus Alonso, Benjamin Chilwell case. When a player is given their chance to stake a claim and they perform at that level, they stay. In my opinion, that was one of the main problems that I was slightly upset for, Emi Martinez. Like, he had done such a good job, and then, well, we're going back to Leno. I really would like to see Arteta maintain with Ramsdale. Now, if Ramsdale, has a couple off games, then you switch back to Leno. But at that point in time, it does bring up a kind of weird dynamic. Does Leno, right, he is senior enough that I don't think he'll take kindly to being benched at all. So it's very difficult, right? It is a tightrope, but I stick with Ramsdale, right? He is ideally the future of goalkeeping at Arsenal Football Club. Don't take him out now. As long as he keeps doing the business, as long as he keeps doing his job, keep him in.
Yeah. I'm kind of in agreement with you, and I think that it is a very weird dynamic, because you think if... like you said, if Ramsdale has a bad run of form, if he's what do you do? Because at that point, you've already kind of unsettled Leno. Leno's, to be fair, he's already on his way out, right? There's always already enough momentum that you can see that he's clearly on his way out. So if you go through and you give him kind of that boost, do we possibly move on from him in January? If we have enough confidence in Ramsdale, do we possibly, look, because he doesn't seem like he would want to be there, playing second fiddle. And he still wants to try. He's just now started to actually play a little bit for Germany. So this is his opportunity to really cement. And that's really, I think, for a lot of German players, the most important thing. League play is fine and dandy and all, get paid. But, your pride is really playing for your country. And if he doesn't feel like he's getting the best opportunity to do that, he is definitely going to look elsewhere. And I'm sure there are plenty of teams. And Leno is a talented keeper. I think this has just started to become the wrong situation for him. And if anything, being able to potentially move on from him sooner rather than later, if Ramsdale ends up being, either the answer or enough of the answer to warrant continual inclusion, then by all means, do what's best for the player, do what's best for the club, do what's best for the situation, and move on. I really do, I was a doubter. You can listen to the earlier episodes if you don't believe me. I was a doubter about Ramsdale. I was hesitant on the signing. I wasn't confident in his ability to play out the back. They didn't really show enough, with Sheffield United for me to feel like this is the right keeper for the long term. Like, I feel like you're trying to bottleneck this, I want a homegrown keeper, into the situation, and maybe you could have gone with a better option elsewhere. But Arteta, Ramsdale was Arteta's man. He was who he wanted, who he pushed for. And if he ends up panning out, then that does give me a little more confidence in Arteta. Because right now, my confidence in him is was at all-time low before this match. It hasn't really grown too much. But it's trending in a more positive direction than it was before. Well, that's it, because we don't have European football to talk about this week. So
It's true.
Yeah, we will resume with the Arsenal conversation on Thursday. So for now, that is it for us. I do want to thank our wonderful particle dogs Let me restart that one, because I fucked that one up. I want to thank Particle Dogs for our wonderful intro and outro music. It's weird. It's almost as if I have done this like 70 or 80 times. You would think at that point I probably could actually say that correctly. But no.
I like the idea of having particle dogs, though.
Yeah.
I don't know what it would be, but I would love to have our particle dogs. I would enjoy that.
And again, if you are listening to us on a various, podcast platform, if it has the ability to rate us, please do so. We do appreciate any and all feedback. Subscribe if it gives you the option. Now, a platform that does give you the option to subscribe is YouTube. And if you are watching this episode on YouTube, please leave a comment. Please subscribe. Do all the stupid YouTube shit. Slap the bell, ring the dong, do the thing. I don't give a fuck. Whatever it is that lets you listen to us more than once, please do. And, if you liked what you heard, leave us a comment below. Well, any final thoughts, Andrew, before we call it a day?
No, I'm just actually glad that you're enjoying it again, right? You actually get the 3
man.
points.
Dude.
You're looking forward to going into an episode. It's nice. Nice, man.
I kid you not, because this is our first video. If Arsenal would have lost, man, this has just been like depression. I'd have been like, all right, so yeah, let's talk
put
about
some eyeliner on. Come in full goth.
Get some crawling in my skin. These wounds, they will not heal. Well, on that note, on behalf of Andrew, my name is Sean. We are Gunners and Blues signing out. Have a good one, everybody.
See you guys.